Let me take you back to a foggy evening in Victorian London. Sherlock Holmes, the world's greatest detective, is sitting in his study at 221B Baker Street. His friend, Dr. Watson, walks in, puzzled by how Holmes seems to know everything about a stranger just by glancing at him. "Elementary, my dear Watson," Holmes says, pointing out the mud on the man's boots, the calluses on his hands, and the faint smell of chemicals on his coat. To Watson, it's magic. To Holmes, it's observation. This is where Maria Konnikova begins her journey in Mastermind, How to Think Like Sherlock Holmes. She invites us to step into the shoes of the legendary detective and learn how to sharpen our minds, observe the world more deeply, and think more clearly. But this isn't just a book about solving crimes, it's a guide to solving life. Konnikova, a psychologist and writer, uses Holmes as a metaphor for the kind of mindful, deliberate thinking we all need in a world full of distractions. She argues that our brains are like attics, cluttered with useless information, biases, and emotions. Holmes, on the other hand, has a perfectly organized mental attic. He sees what others miss, thinks before he acts, and never lets his emotions cloud his judgment. The book is divided into two main systems of thinking: the Watson system and the Holmes system. The Watson system is fast, instinctive, and emotional. It's how most of us operate day to day. The Holmes system, however, is slow, deliberate, and logical. It's the system we need to cultivate if we want to think like the great detective. Konnikova doesn't just tell us to think like Holmes, she shows us how. She takes us through the science of attention, memory, and creativity, blending psychology with practical exercises. For example, she teaches us how to observe like Holmes by paying attention to details we normally ignore. She also explains how to avoid cognitive biases, those mental shortcuts that often lead us astray. But here's the twist. Thinking like Holmes isn't just about solving mysteries. It's about living a more intentional life. It's about noticing the beauty in the mundane, making better decisions, and understanding the people around us. So, as we dive deeper into Mastermind, let's imagine ourselves as Holmes, sitting in that study, pipe in hand, ready to observe, deduce, and think our way through life's challenges. Because, as Konnikova reminds us, the mind is our greatest tool, and it's time we learned how to use it. Part 2. The Science of Observation and the Power of Mindfulness. Picture this: you're walking through a park on a crisp autumn morning. The leaves are golden, the air smells faintly of wood smoke, and the sound of crunching gravel underfoot fills your ears. Now, if I asked you to describe everything you saw, heard, and felt in that moment, how detailed could you be? Most of us would miss the faint chirp of a bird hidden in the trees, the way the sunlight filters through the leaves, or the subtle shift in the wind. But Sherlock Holmes, he wouldn't miss a thing. In Mastermind, Maria Konnikova dives into the science of observation, showing us how to train our brains to notice what's truly important. She explains that observation isn't just about seeing, it's about seeing with purpose. Holmes doesn't just look, he observes. And the difference between the two is mindfulness. Mindfulness, as Konnikova describes it, is the art of being fully present in the moment. It's about quieting the noise in our heads, the endless to-do lists, the worries, the distractions, and focusing on what's right in front of us. Holmes is the epitome of mindfulness. He doesn't let his mind wander, he directs it with precision. But how do we achieve this level of focus in a world that's constantly pulling us in a million directions? Konnikova offers practical strategies. One of her key techniques is what she calls the brain attic. Imagine your mind as a physical space, a cluttered attic filled with old furniture, dusty boxes, and forgotten memories. Holmes's attic is meticulously organized. Every piece of information has its place, and he only keeps what's useful. To start organizing your own brain attic, Konnikova suggests practicing selective attention. This means consciously choosing what to focus on and what to ignore. For example, when you're in a conversation, instead of thinking about what you're going to say next, truly listen to the other person. Notice their tone, their body language, the words they emphasize. This simple shift can transform how you interact with the world. Another powerful tool is the habit of reflection. Holmes doesn't just observe, he reflects on what he's observed. He takes the time to process information, make connections, and draw conclusions. Konnikova encourages us to do the same. At the end of each day, take a few minutes to review what you've seen, heard, and learned. Ask yourself, what did I miss? What could I have done differently? This practice not only sharpens your observation skills, but also helps you learn from your experiences. But here's the catch: observation and mindfulness require effort. They're not passive activities. You have to train your brain just as Holmes did. Konnikova compares it to building a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it gets. So the next time you're in that park or anywhere else, challenge yourself to observe like Holmes. Notice the details, big and small. Be present. And remember, as Konnikova writes, the world is full of obvious things which nobody by any chance ever observes. Part 3. The Art of Deduction and Avoiding Cognitive Biases. Imagine this. You're at a dinner party and someone tells a story that seems a little too perfect. The details are crisp, the timeline is flawless, and everyone at the table is nodding along, captivated, but something feels off. You can't quite put your finger on it, but your gut is telling you there's more to the story. What do? Do you trust your instincts or do you dig deeper? This is where Sherlock Holmes excels. He doesn't just trust his gut, he questions it. He knows that our instincts, while powerful, are often clouded by biases and assumptions. In Mastermind, Maria Konnikova explores the art of deduction and the pitfalls of cognitive biases, showing us how to think more clearly and make better decisions. Deduction, as Holmes practices it, is the process of drawing logical conclusions from the evidence at hand. But here's the thing, deduction only works if the evidence is accurate, and that's where most of us go wrong. We jump to conclusions, rely on stereotypes, and let our emotions dictate our thinking. Konnikova introduces us to a concept called motivated reasoning. This is the tendency to interpret information in a way that confirms what we already believe. For example, if you're convinced that someone is untrustworthy, you'll interpret everything they do as evidence of their dishonesty, even if there's a perfectly innocent explanation. Holmes, on the other hand, approaches every case with an open mind. He doesn't let his preconceptions cloud his judgment. So how do we avoid falling into the trap of motivated reasoning? Konnikova suggests practicing what she calls systematic thinking. This means breaking down a problem into its component parts and examining each piece objectively. For instance, if you're trying to solve a conflict at work, don't just focus on the other person's behavior. Look at the context, the communication patterns, and your own role in the situation. Another common bias Konnikova highlights is the availability heuristic. This is our tendency to rely on information that's readily available, usually because it's recent or emotionally charged, rather than seeking out more accurate or comprehensive data. For example, if you hear about a plane crash on the news, you might suddenly feel afraid of flying, even though statistically, flying is much safer than driving. Holmes avoids this trap by gathering all the facts before forming a conclusion. Konnikova also emphasizes the importance of questioning assumptions. Holmes famously says, "It is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data." In other words, don't assume you know the answer before you've done the work. This is especially important in our personal lives. How often do we assume we know what someone else is thinking or feeling, only to find out we were completely wrong? To think like Holmes, we need to cultivate a habit of curiosity. Ask questions, challenge your assumptions, and most importantly, be willing to admit when you're wrong. As Konnikova writes, the ability to change your mind is a strength, not a weakness. So the next time you're faced with a problem, big or small, take a page out of Holmes's book. Slow down, gather the facts. And remember, the truth is often hidden in the details. Part 4. The role of creativity and imagination in problem solving. Let me take you back to one of Sherlock Holmes's most famous cases, the Hound of the Baskervilles. Holmes is faced with a seemingly supernatural mystery, a giant, ghostly hound terrorizing the Baskerville family. While others are quick to believe in the legend, Holmes doesn't jump to conclusions. Instead, he uses his imagination to explore every possible explanation, no matter how far-fetched. In the end, it's this creative thinking that leads him to the truth. In Mastermind, Maria Konnikova reveals that creativity and imagination are just as important as logic and observation when it comes to solving problems. Holmes isn't just a cold, calculating machine. He's a master of thinking outside the box. And Konnikova shows us how we can cultivate this same skill in our own lives. One of the key ideas Konnikova explores is the concept of mental flexibility. This is the ability to shift your perspective, consider multiple viewpoints, and approach problems from different angles. Holmes doesn't get stuck in one way of thinking. He's constantly experimenting, hypothesizing, and revising his theories. To develop mental flexibility, Konnikova suggests practicing what she calls thought experiments. These are hypothetical scenarios that challenge you to think creatively. For example, imagine you're trying to solve a difficult problem at work. Instead of focusing on the obvious solutions, ask yourself, what would happen if I did the exact opposite? What would someone from a completely different field do in this situation? These exercises force you to break free from conventional thinking and explore new possibilities. Another important aspect of creativity is the ability to make connections between seemingly unrelated ideas. Holmes is a master of this. He can take a seemingly insignificant detail, like the type of mud on a suspect's shoes, and connect it to a larger pattern. Konnikova explains that this skill, known as associative thinking, is something we can all develop. To practice associative thinking, Konnikova recommends keeping a mental scrapbook. This is a collection of ideas, observations, and experiences that you can draw on when solving problems. For example, if you're trying to come up with a new business idea, think about the hobbies you enjoy, the books you've read, or the conversations you've had. You might find inspiration in the most unexpected places. But creativity isn't just about generating ideas, it's also about evaluating them. Holmes doesn't just come up with theories, he tests them rigorously. Konnikova emphasizes the importance of balancing creativity with critical thinking. Once you've brainstormed a list of possible solutions, take the time to analyze each one. Ask yourself, what are the potential risks? What evidence supports this idea? What could go wrong? Finally, Konnikova reminds us that creativity thrives in a relaxed mind. Holmes often retreats to a study to play the violin or sit in silence. These moments of quiet reflection allow his subconscious to work on the problem in the background. Similarly, we need to give our brains time to rest and recharge. Whether it's taking a walk, meditating, or simply daydreaming, these breaks can lead to breakthroughs. So the next time you're faced with a challenge, don't just rely on logic and observation. Tap into your imagination. Think like Holmes, because sometimes the most brilliant solutions come from the most unexpected places. Part 5. The importance of emotional intelligence and self-awareness. Imagine this. Sherlock Holmes is sitting across from Irene Adler, the only woman who ever outsmarted him. She's clever, resourceful, and always one step ahead. But what makes her truly formidable isn't just her intellect. It's her emotional intelligence. She understands Holmes's motivations, anticipates his moves, and uses her own emotions against him. In this high-stakes game of wits, it's not just about who's smarter, it's about who understands people better. In Mastermind, Maria Konnikova delves into the role of emotional intelligence in thinking like Sherlock Holmes. While Holmes is often portrayed as a detached, almost robotic figure, Konnikova argues that his success is deeply rooted in his ability to understand and manage emotions, both his own and others. Emotional intelligence, as Konnikova explains, is the ability to recognize, understand, and influence emotions. It's what allows Holmes to read people like open books. He notices the subtle shifts in body language, the hesitation in someone's voice, the flicker of fear in their eyes. But more importantly, he knows how to use this information to his advantage. One of the key components of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. Holmes is acutely aware of his own emotions and how they affect his thinking. He knows when he's feeling frustrated, impatient, or overconfident, and he takes steps to manage these feelings. For example, when a case becomes too personal, he steps back to regain his objectivity. Konnikova emphasizes that self-awareness is a skill we can all develop. She suggests practicing mindfulness, paying attention to your thoughts and emotions without judgment. For instance, the next time you're in a stressful situation, take a moment to check in with yourself. How are you feeling? What's driving those emotions? This simple act of self-reflection can help you stay calm and focused, even in the most challenging circumstances. Another important aspect of emotional intelligence is empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. Holmes might seem cold and analytical, but he's actually a master of empathy. He knows how to put himself in someone else's shoes, whether it's a suspect, a client, or even a criminal. This allows him to anticipate their actions and motivations. To cultivate empathy, Konnikova recommends practicing active listening. This means truly paying attention to what someone is saying without interrupting or judging. It's about being present and open to their perspective. For example, if a friend is sharing a problem, Resist the urge to offer advice right away. Instead, focus on understanding their feelings and experiences. This not only strengthens your relationships, but also gives you valuable insights into human behavior. But emotional intelligence isn't just about understanding emotions, it's also about managing them. Holmes knows how to stay calm under pressure, how to channel his anger into focus, and how to use his emotions strategically. Konnikova suggests developing emotional regulation skills, such as deep breathing, visualization, or even physical exercise. These techniques can help you stay in control, even when emotions run high. Finally, Konnikova reminds us that emotional intelligence is a lifelong journey. It's not something you master overnight, it's something you practice every day. By becoming more self-aware, empathetic, and emotionally regulated, you can think more clearly, connect more deeply, and navigate life's challenges with grace. So, the next time you're faced with a difficult situation, remember, it's not just about what you know, it's about how you feel. Think like Holmes, understand yourself, understand others, and let your emotional intelligence guide you to success. Part 6. The Power of Habits and Building a Holmesian Mindset. Picture this: Sherlock Holmes is in his study, surrounded by books, papers, and the faint scent of tobacco. He's not just sitting there idly, he's practicing. Every day, he hones his skills of observation, deduction, and creativity. He's not waiting for a case to come to him, he's preparing for it. This is the power of habit, and it's one of the secrets to his success. In Mastermind, Maria Konnikova explores how habits shape our thinking and behavior. She argues that to think like Sherlock Holmes, we need to cultivate habits that support a mindful, deliberate, and curious mindset. It's not enough to know what Holmes does, we need to practice it consistently. One of the key habits Konnikova emphasizes is the practice of mindfulness. Holmes is always present, always focused. He doesn't let his mind wander, he directs it with purpose. Konnikova suggests starting small, perhaps with a daily mindfulness exercise, like focusing on your breath for 5 minutes. Over time, this practice can help you become more aware of your thoughts and emotions and better able to control them. Another important habit is the practice of reflection. Holmes doesn't just solve a case and move on, he reflects on what he's learned. Konnikova recommends setting aside time each day to review your experiences. Ask yourself, what went well? What could I have done differently? What did I learn? This habit of reflection not only sharpens your thinking, but also helps you grow from your mistakes. Konnikova also highlights the importance of curiosity. Holmes is endlessly curious. He's always asking questions, exploring new ideas, and seeking out knowledge. To cultivate this habit, Konnikova suggests making a conscious effort to learn something new every day. It could be as simple as reading an article on a topic you know nothing about, or as involved as taking up a new hobby. The key is to keep your mind engaged and open to new possibilities. But habits aren't just about what you do. They're also about what you don't do. Holmes is careful to avoid habits that cloud his judgment or waste his mental energy. For example, he doesn't indulge in gossip or idle chatter. He focuses on what's important. Konnikova advises us to be mindful of our own habits, especially those that distract us or drain our mental resources. One of the most powerful habits Konnikova discusses is the practice of deliberate practice. Holmes doesn't just rely on his natural talents, he works hard to improve his skills. Konnikova suggests setting specific, measurable goals for your thinking habits. For example, you might aim to observe 3 new details about your environment each day, or to ask at least 1 probing question in every conversation. By practicing these skills deliberately, you can gradually build a Holmesian mindset. Finally, Konnikova reminds us that habits are most effective when they're aligned with our values and goals. Holmes's habits are driven by his passion for solving mysteries and his commitment to justice. To build lasting habits, we need to connect them to something meaningful in our own lives. What do you care about? What do you want to achieve? Let these questions guide your habits and keep you motivated. So the next time you find yourself falling into old, unproductive habits, remember, you have the power to change. Think like Holmes. Cultivate habits that support your goals. And watch as your mind becomes sharper, more focused, and more capable of solving life's mysteries. Part 7. Applying Holmesian thinking to everyday life. Imagine this. You're at a crowded coffee shop waiting in line to order. The person in front of you is tapping their foot impatiently, glancing at their watch every few seconds. The barista is moving quickly, but the line isn't budging. You feel your frustration rising. But then you remember Sherlock Holmes. What would he do in the situation? He wouldn't let his emotions take over. He'd observe, analyze, and find a way to make the best of it. In Mastermind, Maria Konnikova shows us how to apply Holmesian thinking to the challenges of everyday life. It's not just about solving crimes or unraveling mysteries. It's about navigating the small, everyday moments with clarity and purpose. One of the key lessons Konnikova shares is the importance of perspective. Holmes doesn't just see the world as it is, he sees it as it could be. When faced with a problem, he doesn't get stuck in the details. He steps back and looks at the bigger picture. Konnikova suggests doing the same in your own life. For example, if you're stuck in traffic, instead of focusing on the frustration, think about how you can use that time productively, maybe by listening to an audiobook or planning your day. Another important aspect of Holmesian thinking is adaptability. Holmes is always ready to change his approach if the situation demands it. He doesn't cling to a theory just because he's invested time in it. He's willing to let it go if the evidence points in a different direction. Konnikova encourages us to cultivate this same flexibility. For instance, if a project at work isn't going as planned, don't be afraid to pivot. Ask yourself, what's not working? What can I do differently? Konnikova also emphasizes the value of patience. Holmes doesn't rush to conclusions. He takes his time, gathering all the facts before making a decision. In our fast-paced world, this can be a challenge, but Konnikova reminds us that good thinking takes time. Whether you're making a big decision or solving a small problem, give yourself the space to think it through. One of the most practical applications of Holmesian thinking is in our relationships. Holmes is a master of reading people. He notices the subtle cues that reveal their thoughts and feelings. Konnikova suggests using this skill to improve your own interactions. For example, if a friend seems upset, don't just ask if they're okay. Pay attention to their body language, tone of voice, and facial expressions. This can help you understand what they're really feeling and respond with empathy. But Holmesian thinking isn't just about solving problems, it's also about finding joy in the process. Holmes loves what he does, and that passion fuels his creativity and perseverance. Konnikova encourages us to approach our own lives with the same sense of curiosity and enthusiasm. Whether you're tackling a challenging project or simply going about your daily routine, try to find something to enjoy. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I make it interesting? Finally, Konnikova reminds us that thinking like Holmes is a journey, not a destination. It's something you practice every day in big ways and small. It's about being present, staying curious, and always striving to improve. So the next time you're faced with a challenge, whether it's a difficult decision, a frustrating situation, or just a long line at the coffee shop, remember, you have the tools to think like Holmes. Observe, analyze, adapt, and most importantly, enjoy the process. Part 8. The Legacy of Sherlock Holmes and the Timeless Lessons of Mastermind. Let me take you back to the final scene of The Adventure of the Final Problem. Sherlock Holmes and his arch-nemesis, Professor Moriarty, are locked in a deadly struggle at the edge of the Reichenbach Falls. As they grapple on the precipice, Holmes knows that this might be the end. But even in that moment, his mind is clear, his focus unwavering. He doesn't panic, he thinks, and in doing so, he leaves behind a legacy that continues to inspire us more than a century later. In Mastermind, Maria Konnikova doesn't just teach us how to think like Sherlock Holmes. She shows us why it matters. Holmes isn't just a fictional character, he's a symbol of what the human mind is capable of. His methods, observation, deduction, creativity, and emotional intelligence are timeless tools that can help us navigate the complexities of modern life. One of the key takeaways from Konnikova's book is the importance of intentionality. Holmes doesn't just drift through life, he lives with purpose. Every observation, every deduction, every decision is made with care and deliberation. Konnikova encourages us to do the same. Whether you're making a career choice, solving a personal problem, or simply going about your day, ask yourself, what's my goal? What's the best way to achieve it? By living intentionally, you can make the most of every moment. Another important lesson is the value of lifelong learning. Holmes is always curious, always seeking out new knowledge and experiences. Konnikova reminds us that learning doesn't stop when we leave school. It's a lifelong journey. Whether it's reading a book, taking a class, or simply exploring a new hobby, keep your mind engaged and open to new possibilities. Konnikova also emphasizes the power of resilience. Holmes faces countless challenges and setbacks, but he never gives up. He learns from his mistakes, adapts to new situations, and keeps moving forward. In our own lives, we'll inevitably face obstacles and failures. But as Konnikova writes, failure is not the end, it's an opportunity to learn and grow. But perhaps the most enduring lesson of Mastermind is the importance of balance. Holmes isn't just a thinking machine, he's a fully realized human being. He plays the violin, enjoys a good pipe, and values his friendships. Konnikova reminds us that a well-rounded life is essential for clear thinking. Take time to relax, connect with others, and pursue your passions. A balanced mind is a sharp mind. As we close the book on Mastermind, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned. Thinking like Sherlock Holmes isn't just about solving mysteries, it's about living a more intentional, curious, and resilient life. It's about seeing the world with fresh eyes, embracing challenges with an open mind, and finding joy in the process. So as you go about your day, remember, you have the tools to think like Holmes. Observe the details, question your assumptions, stay curious, and most importantly, never stop learning. Because as Konnikova reminds us, the mind is our greatest tool, and it's time we learned how to use it to its full potential.